Hello, are you feeling out of sync with the world or some aspect of your life? And by out of sync, I mean feeling like maybe you had more life satisfaction or more satisfaction with your work, your friends, your family, some aspect of your life that no longer feels satisfying like you're used to. If that resonates with you, then the solution might lie, or part of the solution almost certainly lies in taking a look at what your values are and working with your values. I'm Dr. Kit Slies. I'm a psychologist and a life coach. And I'm here because I want to inspire your confidence, your self compassion, and your growth. And today we're going to do that by talking about values. If you've never worked with your own values, we'll talk a little bit about how to do that, some introductory concepts that are good. Even if you do work with values and you've done values work, it can be good to review some of these introductory concepts. And then I'm going to talk about an exercise or an approach of working with your values that can really expand your ideas of how to apply the concept of values in your life. It's an approach that I sort of stumbled upon actually just the other day because I needed a fresher upper with my own values. I work with my values a lot. And so I'll talk about what that approach is. But let's start with an introductory. Just what are values? Why are they important? Why are they part of the solution when we're feeling out of sync or burned out, or just like life has lost that zest that maybe it used to have for us? So, values are principles or ideas that we personally hold important. They guide us in life. Our values can change a little bit over time, although they do typically, once we reach young adulthood, 20s, 30s, they tend to solidify more, whereas in our younger life, they might fluctuate as we're kind of trying on different values for size, right? But they can still change. And so it's important to be looking at what our values are and how they might be changing or evolving over time. And they are different for everybody. So not everybody holds the same values. Values can also exist in a hierarchy. So we might place more importance on certain values rather than others. So let me just give you some examples here. A value for somebody might be a family is a pretty common one that we see. Family or relationships of some sort, people might place high importance on that. And I'm going to use this as an example to show how just because somebody has a value, it might not be the same for two people. So two people could come and say, yeah, I one of my top 5 or 10 values is family. It's really super important to me. But that might look different for different people. So one person might value family, and to them, that might mean spending time with their family is what they value. And so they're going to prioritize spending time with family over of other things in their life. Another person might say family is a really high value, but for whatever reason, time is not the way that shows up for them in their value. Maybe they see value in their family as being able to provide financial support for them, or being able to show their love in other ways, or maybe receiving love from their family is the way that they value family. So I just use that as an example to show how it can be helpful to identify, an overarching value, and to then drill down into really being specific in how that's important for you or how you want that to show up in your life. And you can go ahead and Google values to get a nice long list of values, just some other examples: honesty, integrity, beauty, health, fitness, spirituality. These are all examples of overarching concepts, ideas that can represent a value. And when we think about values, one way to identify what's important to us is, well, but just by looking at that list, you can pick out some items that just feel important to you and that feel like maybe, hey, that's maybe a value of mine. But then you want to ask yourself some deeper questions to really think about, well, do I really value this? And ways to do that are to ask yourself, think about times in your life when life felt really, really, really good. Life felt easy maybe for you. You felt a high level of life satisfaction. And you want to think about specific moments and think about 5 or 10 of these moments and just identify them where you just felt so good, like life is as good as it gets in these moments. And then look back at that list of values and think about which of those values were present for you, or what were you doing, what were you doing, or what was present in your life at these moments for you that felt really good. You can also sort of do the converse. You can think about times in your life where maybe you were really unhappy, dissatisfied, really like low points. Maybe life felt chaotic, life felt hard. Just specific events, be specific in these events and identify from your list of values um, what was missing for you. Okay, this can help you kind of drill down and identify those values. Values kind of can come into our lives in extreme forms also. We might value something and we can hold that value to an unhealthy degree. So maybe somebody values like cleanliness or order, and that can show up in a very healthy way in someone's life. You know, if their house is in order, they feel good and they've got a nice system for doing that. But that can show up in an unhealthy way where anybody who walks into their house or into their life, they are harping on them of this needs to be a particular way, and I don't want you in my life or something like that if you can't keep it clean in a certain way. Or maybe with their kids, no fun can be had unless the house is a certain way. And well, there is a healthy way to do that. But if we're looking at this person, if you were their friend or their child or their spouse, you might say, oh yeah, so and so, they always need things to be a certain way. They always need things to be clean. That's an example of an extreme value. So you can ask people around you, hey, what's something, fill in this blank. I always blank. What would somebody say about you that you are always doing? That's another way to identify some values. And then we can kind of think about, well, how do we get you to live that value in a more balanced, healthy way if it is presenting itself in an extreme way? But that's just an exercise to help identify the values. So once you have your values, then we want to look at your priorities. Priorities are, what do you devote time to before other things in your life? What do you, when you wake up in the morning, what are you going to do before anything else? Or when you look at the month behind you, how did you spend a lot of your time? How are you spending your time? That shows us what you're prioritizing. So going back to that example, somebody who values family and maybe they value time spent with family specifically, we could look at what they're prioritizing and we could say, hey, this person works like 60, 70 hours a week and they aren't spending a lot of quality time with their family. And we could look at their list of values and say, well, how does work fit into their values? Is, our finances really important? Or maybe like financial freedom or financial stability is also a value of theirs. And we could say that they're prioritizing that value over family, but family is still an important value. How can we create a little bit more balance for them? Or maybe they don't even value finances or work or their career, and they just got caught up in it. They're just working a lot of hours, and that's a no-brainer. We say, okay, let's figure out how to reduce your workload. What are some ways that we can do that so that you can spend more time with your family? So we we look at values and we look at priorities with the goal of our our priorities, in other words, the way that we're spending our time, we want those to sync up. And again, sometimes your values, they can come in conflict. So the question is, how do we create a little bit more balance amongst the way that we are prioritizing time and what our top 5 or 10 values are? Okay, we're not aiming for perfection in that balance. We're just aiming for a little bit more even distribution in terms of how we're prioritizing our time. So this is work that I do with myself. I do it with my clients, and it can be very valuable to identify our values and to see how that shows up. But one thing that I sort of discovered for myself the other day, because I was in a place of feeling like, okay, what am I doing wrong here? I am identifying my values, but things are still feeling kind of out of sync for me. And I did look, and I looked at my priorities and saw that some of that was out of sync, and I'm trying to shore that up a little bit. But I've also realized that it's not just about our own values, it's about the values of the people or the things around us. And so, what do I mean by that? You could look at your own values and then look at the values of your work, your workplace, and see how do those line up, or how are they misaligned? Are there ways to get those in a little bit more alignment? What I did the other day was I had a conversation with my husband. I asked him, "Hey, do you know what your values are?" And I think he had some idea, but we walked through together. He was open to having this conversation. I asked for his permission, first of all, like, "Hey, do you want to talk about this?" And we identified his values just using the same exercise that I just went through with you, of like times in his life where that were really great, times that were not so great, and then his extreme values. And we identified what his values are. And then we said, hey, let's look at my values, Kit's values, and then let's look at my husband's values, and let's try to extrapolate from those. What do we want our family values to be? How can we create some family values that are, speaking to our individual values, but our individual values were not the same. They complemented each other in many ways, but we wanted to think about, as a family, we have children, but you could do this even if you don't have kids. You could think about it as a partnership. How can we create some values that come out of our individual values, that respect our individual values but are different, sort of integrating those values, but coming up with a third set of values that reflect our individual values, respect our individual values, but allow us to have our individual values and allow us to try to prioritize our lives and our time as individuals, but also now as a family. And I will say that doing this was a very rich discussion. And what it allowed me to do was also to look back at my individual values and kind of refine those a little bit further for myself, define them a little bit more for myself, so that not only do we have these family values that are guiding principles for us and in our family, and how we want to be, my husband and I, how we want to relate to each other, but also the things we want to teach our kids and place importance on with our kids. But also allowed me to go back to my individual values to think about, what does this mean for me? Are there ways that I can be showing up better for myself in my personal life, with in my relationships, in my self-care, in the work that I do, and what are some specific activities. Again, that's another way of saying a priority. What are some ways that I can prioritize my time and be intentional with my time so that I feel like I'm actually living my values a little bit more fully? And I found this exercise to be very helpful. It helped me kind of brush up on my values and feel just more connected, more confident in my life, and have more self compassion with myself about, hey, let me be kind with myself as I sort of reassess and shift some things around for me. And over time, this is going to allow me to also feel like I'm growing as I'm able to prioritize my time. I'm going to feel growth because I'm going to feel the effect of that because it's going to be in alignment with my values. I'm going to grow in the things that I'm doing, in the way that I'm showing up in the world. So this is some ways that you can identify your values, and then a few ways to work with them, right? So one way to work with your values is to look at your priorities and let your values be that guiding principle, that guiding North Star, and to reshift your priorities. It doesn't need to be big shifts. These can be very little shifts. And then another way to work with your values is to think about how your values are aligning or not aligning with other people or systems in your life, and to have some intentional, maybe have some conversations with people, some friends, family, loved ones. What are their values, and trying to integrate your values, or just thinking about systems that you interact with in your life. It could be, again, your workplace. It could be different community organizations that you're involved in, and really kind of thinking about how do your values interact with their values? How do they align? How can you get them in more alignment? And when you're intentional with your values this way, it can really help you feel satisfied. It can help you find overall meaning in your life and just help you feel like things are syncing up. So I hope you found this useful today, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.